Well, my colleague, reporter Manqoba Mchunu, is on the ground as well, KZN, to give us more on the story, as of course this is the day when the authorities in KZN have been checking things out following the flooding in April and of course being the first anniversary of the July riots from last year. Manqoba, good afternoon. What's the latest you can tell us?
Well, certainly, Prajan, we have been following the Premier today as he visited some of those hotspots where we saw the July unrest, where we saw several shops being looted. And of course, I can tell you, Prajan, that the remnants of that looting are still quite visible in many of these areas that we visited. We visited a shopping mall in Umlazi as well as a shopping mall in Kwamashu. And Prajan, I can tell you now that even now, those businesses are still struggling to get back to their feet. We did see some construction still underway a year later after those violent unrest took place in this particular province. But the Premier is quite upbeat, Dan, in terms of recovery, saying that the province is well on its way to recovery. He says that up until now, several businesses have opened, but there are still some challenges when it comes to some of the businesses. There are major issues when it comes to the red tape, the bureaucratic red tape, as well as insurance payout, which have been some of the issues that have really stalled some of the progress in terms of recovery. But to speak further, I'm now joined by Neville Maki, who is the CEO of KwaZulu-Natal Investment, who's been really spearheading this project of trying to get back the province to its feet. Neville, let's start here. The economic impact of all of this, surely it was devastating, and for investor confidence as well.
Absolutely. What a journey it has been since that dark week that we experienced right here in KwaZulu-Natal. But what has been encouraging has been really the resilience of business. They've come to the party not only to look at projects and reinvesting in the province, but also in terms of the partnership in dealing with safety and security. Our biggest challenge during that week was, of course, coordination in terms of security, and our biggest learning has been specifically that there's now better coordination, better security management, specifically related to threats. Through the partnership with the business movement, we've realized great strides in dealing on a PPP model with threats, and as well as dealing with the intelligence on the ground that assists in giving an alert, and a rapid response team is then immediately deployed to curb such issues.
Let's talk about the impact itself. Surely this must have been quite bad for investor confidence. I mean, what was it like?
It was very difficult. You know, we had a whole range of investors. We had investors who actually pulled the plug. We had investors who put a pause on their investment decisions. But then we had some investors who played a wait and see. And the positive part is that those that put a pause and a wait and see actually have invested in the province. We're sitting at close on 18 billion rand of investments that we have realized on the ground since the July unrest. At the Presidential Investment Conference, we had further investment commitments made by companies, just over 21 billion rand that was actually committed at the Presidential Investment Conference right now in March. We've seen a number of programs, international programs. We had the Intra-Africa Trade Fair that took place here, where African Bank brought a lot of investors to the province. And we've seen, of course, most recently the Durban July, the Hollywood Best Durban July coming back, really boosting confidence in terms of the market right here in KwaZulu-Natal.
Let's talk about businesses on the ground. Of course, there's those who are still struggling to get back to their feet. What is the situation like currently now? Where do we stand in terms of recovery?
We have two parts. Those that were insured, a lot of them are now getting back to their feet. You would have seen in a number of sites that we visited this morning that there's a lot of construction, and they're giving dates in terms of exactly when they'll be opening. And then you have others that are not open yet, those that are uninsured, or the ones that really, through their insurance schemes, they were underinsured. And those are the ones that we are assisting in linking with some of the funding agencies to really try and assist them in covering the shortfall that they have actually experienced. In partnership with the IDC, Trade and Investment KwaZulu-Natal, and the IDC, we were able to also assist companies. The IDC actually set aside 30 million rand, particularly to cover the uninsured and those that are in the township and rural economies. And that is completely dispersed, and we were able to reach over 200 companies as a result of that facility that was set aside by the IDC.
You have touched on issues of security. Of course, these are important. We don't want to see a return of or a rehappening of this ever again in future, because it has devastating consequences for the economy. Are you happy with the security plan currently that has been presented to you?
Absolutely. I think a lot, as I said, has really gone into it. The first thing was the realization that, of course, the capacity of our policing was overstrained. And the best way to really deal with augmenting that was to come into partnership with business, and through the use of their own private security companies and their own intelligence networks, we're able to then formalize a relationship between the private sector as well as the SEPs. We have a very progressive police commissioner, Commissioner Mkwanazi, who's really driven that initiative through and through. As a result, a lot of the threats that we've heard about in the last couple of months, they have not materialized purely because the intelligence system has been beefed up, and through that partnership with the private sector.
What lessons can be learned both by business as well as government from all of this?
I think the first thing for business obviously is to ensure that you are adequately covered. That's the most important thing, and only when you are reaching out to try and tap into insurance, then you realize that you have not included this or included that. That's the first thing. The second thing from business side is really partnerships. Not only partnerships with government, but also partnerships within the business community that assist in really going a long way in giving intelligence and assisting in supporting each other. From a government perspective is better coordination in terms of the security cluster, which the Premier spoke at length about, and how government has really gone out of their way to ensure that that support is visible, and through that commitment from the government, it has really shown great improvements. And then the last thing is, government cannot do it on its own. Government has to do it in partnership with the business community and all the social partners, labor, as well as the broader community on the ground. Because if everyone is involved in the economic recovery, then the commitment is not only left on government alone, it's left on everyone's shoulders.
Okay, thank you very much for speaking to us. Machi, who is the CEO of Trade Investment here, saying that they're quite hopeful that this difficult time as a province, of course, there have been quite a number of other issues that have also come up, including, of course, the April floods that we saw, which have also caused a lot of devastation for this particular province. But hopeful with the path that they've taken in terms of recovery, in terms of trade, in terms of trying to bring back, the business to KwaZulu-Natal, that they are well on a road to recovery.